Hi, everyone. My name is Torin Perez, and over the last few years, I've had the privilege of being invited to speak at over 30 companies with one simple purpose, and that is to inspire. To inspire change in how we think and how we behave, and ultimately, how we feel about ourselves. Over the next 10 minutes that we have to share together, I'd like you to walk away with 3 actionable ideas that you can take with you on your journeys to becoming inclusive leaders when you walk out of this room. In total silence, I'd like you to quickly rise to your feet. I'd like you to make eye contact with somebody in the room right now. Ideally, it's somebody who you have not met yet and don't know. And if you are struggling to find somebody to make eye contact with, just look at anyone. When I snap my finger, I'd like you to take notice of the thought that's in your mind about that person. And I'm going to do that several times. Here we go. And notice that thought. And notice that thought. And notice that thought. Now quickly make eye contact with somebody else. If you can't make eye contact with somebody, just look at anybody in the room and notice that thought. And notice that thought. And notice that thought. Now look at the person on your left and right and tell them, snap out of autopilot. Tell them with some energy, have some fun with it, snap out of autopilot. You see, I don't know what thoughts you had in your mind, who you felt warm to or cold to, who you may have thought that you shared similar views or values or beliefs with, or who you may think that you share a certain identity with based on what you see, or who you thought was well-dressed or good-looking, or who you'd like to go out with after this. But what I do know is that our brains primarily are dominated by our unconscious thoughts. And these unconscious thoughts are driving and influencing, reinforming and reimagining what our biases are. Some of our most natural biases are being reinforced or reinformed at these moments. You can quickly take your seats. So as you think about this, I want you to picture this. Picture yourself snapping out of autopilot in these little moments when you're in a room with people who you've never met, whose stories you don't know. Don't let your autopilot send a message to them that you already know their story before they've even had a chance to speak. And what happens is our brains are quickly moving, trying to answer certain questions, like, is this person like me? And if so, or if not, does this person belong in my in-group? And the answers to those questions set into effect a ripple that either affects our thoughts or our actions that ultimately leave certain people out or leave certain people bringing them in. Things like microaggressions or microaffirmations that we may unintentionally be giving out. Naomi Eisenberger, her research in fMRI scans showed us that the same parts of the neural receptors that are activating and lighting up when we receive physical pain, a punch to the face or a knee to the stomach, is the same part of the brain that lights up when we feel left out, when we feel those stings of exclusion. So today I'm encouraging you to snap yourself out of autopilot, because what would happen is that we start to have a new normal where respect for all is there, willingness and openness to listen to others with different perspectives, and ultimately building deeper capacities within ourselves for empathy. So that brings me to our second actionable idea for the day, and that is learn outside of your box. So this is not think outside of the box. This is literally learning outside of your box. Your team, your company, your current domain of expertise, your circle of friends, your current community and comfort zone. In 2006, the Posse Foundation took an inner city kid from Brooklyn and placed him in South Africa for the summer. I had a chance to live with a German host family, work with teenage entrepreneurs in a black township, and ultimately teach English in a colored community. That summer challenged my own perceptions of my own identity and who I knew and thought myself to be, but perhaps even more importantly, it expanded the possibilities with which I think about the world and the people who I want to touch. And I never wanted to go back to living within any borders. And so perhaps travel could be one way of learning outside of your current box. But perhaps it also happens within our social groups and circles. Perhaps as we think about our professional networks, we have affinity groups and ERGs. At Bloomberg, I had the privilege of leading our employee resource group growth 150% in 15 months. And I'm proud of that, but I'm even more proud of the fact that we reached out to people within the other affinity groups to learn about our shared pains and challenges, so that ultimately we could learn from each other to figure out how to raise all of our boats instead of just one or just our own. I think about you all and the groups that you're a part of and how reaching out and building those bridges can be a way of building momentum towards creating the diversity and inclusion and belonging that we so desire. I also think about how we seek out friendships and networks that we can apply to or seek out to become a part of. Last year, I had a chance to be a part of the inaugural TED Talks residency program, working alongside incredible thinkers for 3 months in the TED offices in New York. People who were trying to figure out how to reconnect the homeless with their families, people who are trying to destigmatize depression, and people who are trying to make it cool to be a first-time entrepreneur at the age of 65. True story. And as I think about those people, I think about the people who are in this room. We're here for tech inclusion, and if we don't seek out the stories of people who are here, we miss opportunities to figure out how we might be able to solve a problem differently. I think about how they approach and their passion and their search for assisting people who may be marginalized in ways that I've never thought of. Which leads me to my third actionable idea for you today. In actually March of this year, I was on the end of a 3-day, 3-city trip. I was doing speaking engagements around the country. I was dog-tired on the train, on the escalator, going up to catch the train to go home, when I heard a startling noise. Do, 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 do. I looked behind me in shock to see an elderly woman practically coming up the escalator on her back. Her luggage was in front of her and her cane was across her body. I looked behind me and I saw a young man who had also briefly stopped, and I said, "I'm going to need your help." I looked back to see all of the people who were between us and that elderly woman continue on walking along on their day. When she got close enough, I reached down, I grabbed that luggage, I tossed it to the young man, I grabbed the cane, I put it over my shoulder, and I reached down in just enough time to grab her and pull her off of that escalator. Over the next 30 minutes, while the emergency staff and the transit authority people and police officers showed up to assess the situation and gather their reports, that young man was sitting down on the ground, back to back with that elderly woman. You see, she was struggling from shortness of breath, which caused her to faint on that escalator. She had no energy to stand or hold herself up on her own. But I'm so grateful to this day that that young man decided to stay there with me. You see, that young man did something. He answered the call. I believe that leadership is not a rank or a title or a role. It's a choice, and it's a decision to lead. And when you come out of these workshops and these speaking and these solo talks, and you feel inspired and eager to bring back your learnings to your organizations, what you will need along the way to succeed is other people who answer the call for you. And sometimes you may need to be that person who answers the call as well. To be an ally, a sponsor, a mentor, a friend, a supporter, somebody who shows that they care, somebody who shows up, somebody who shows their interests. And so today I invite you to answer that call for others, but also to answer the call within yourself. That inner voice, the inner voice of courage, the inner voice of ambition, that says it's time to lead and it's time to act now. In a recent interview, Oprah was reflecting on her many years of experiences interviewing people from all walks of life. And she found that no matter what, across their backgrounds, their personal stories, their vulnerabilities, what we all seek, each and every single one of us in this room, what we all seek is this. She said, what we all want is to be able to live out the truest, highest expression of ourselves as human beings. In this 10-minute talk, I've given you 3 actionable ideas that you can take with you on your journey. And trust me, if you do, this will be a possibility not only for you, but for the people who are around you. Thank you for your time today.